Hello everyone, I have a lot to cover in this video, some good news, some bad news, some reviews, and just about everything in between, but yeah, let's just get started with the bad news. Unfortunately, since I did my last video, we've had some significant passings in professional wrestling, some major names that have unfortunately left us, and I want to pay respects to those people right at the start here. I think right after I did my last video, or maybe even right before, I had received news that Chavo Guerrero Sr. had passed away. Chavo Guerrero Sr. is obviously a very important figure in the history of Lucha Libre and wrestling in Mexico. Obviously the history and significance of the entire Guerrero family has been well documented, and it's unfortunate. He's one of the major historic icons, like many members of the Guerrero family, and obviously you may know him as Chavo's dad. He was Chavo Classic back when Chavo was WWE Cruiserweight Champion, which, calling him Chavo Classic was a good way to get around calling him Chavo Senior. I know Vince, in one of his weird little idiosyncrasies, didn't like to have people called Junior or Senior, and it has something to do with him being a junior, and he didn't like being called Junior, which only makes Roddy Piper's run in at WrestleMania 19 even funnier, as he just constantly calls Vince Jr. You know he's doing it just to egg him, but yeah, very unfortunate passing, and obviously my thoughts, best wishes and prayers go out to the Guerrero family, especially Chavo and his side of the family. I'm sure this is a very hard loss for them, but man, it's weird. I just saw Chavo Sr. in Lucha Underground. He did a run-in during the Rey Chavo Loser Leaves Lucha match, and he played his role perfectly in that match, and it was good to see him again, and it's unfortunate that he passed away so soon after that match aired. Yeah, in addition to him, I also heard that George the Animal Steele passed away. Now, George, when I was a kid, George was one of the first kind of larger-than-life characters that I saw. Somebody that just kind of existed outside of the realm of reality. This guy that just walked around the ring and acted like a gorilla. It's kind of like the first time I saw Abdullah the Butcher, where it's like, I just couldn't believe that could be somebody this animalistic and somebody this violent that could exist in pro wrestling or in any in just about anything on this planet. But they played the role so convincingly that I was like, no, I buy it. I totally buy that this guy is an animal. And it's really weird because I've heard and I've seen examples of it in interviews, but I've been told that George was a very smart guy and very well spoken, so the kind of like mumbling animal that he played on TV was not indicative of a true personality. It really speaks to the type of performer that he was. He was so convincing as the animal, and little bits that he would do, just as simple as like eating the turnbuckle pads and having the stuffing fly everywhere. Nobody else does stuff like that, even back then or since. Nobody really does stuff like George the Animal Steele. He was a very unique character and very unique performer, and probably the best thing he was ever involved with was the feud with Randy Savage and the love triangle with Savage and Miss Elizabeth, which was great. As wacky and as batshit as it was great, and even tied in nicely to the Steamboat Savage match at WrestleMania 3. So, and in addition to that, to speak to what kind of a performer George was, one of my favorite biopics of all time is Ed Wood, directed by Tim Burton. George had a role in that movie. He played Tor, who was a wrestler that was featured in many of Ed Wood's films. A very dubious distinction, but he was nonetheless. And George played the part so well, and it was so convincing, you would think that he was like the reincarnation of Tor Johnson. I think that was his name, Tor Johnson. And he did great in the movie, and he's acting alongside Johnny Depp and Bill Murray, and Sarah Jessica Parker, and, being directed by Tim Burton, very high caliber talents, and he didn't look out of place at all and actually added to the film. So Martin Landau won an Academy Award for his performance as Bela Lugosi in that film. So it's for him to be attached to that project, such a well-received project, and one that I hold in very high esteem, for being both entertaining and really funny, and very almost like a fairy tale-esque look into a very interesting life and career. And George was part of that, and thank you for being so entertaining and being able to land that role and being so good in it. And Yeah, that one really made me sad. Of all the ones that passed this week, I think George was the one that hit me the most because he was the one that I saw as a kid. So naturally, there's the nostalgia feels there, and I was like, man, George is gone? That's really sad. And I know he was close to 80 years old, which in wrestling, that's like... that might as well be 105 in wrestling, unfortunately, but... yeah, thank you to George Steele for all the fond memories and everything that he gave the business. Like I said, very once-in-a-lifetime, very unique character, personality, and talent, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I also heard that Nicole Bass passed away. Nicole Bass didn't have a very long tenure in wrestling. She had a very brief run in the WWF during the Attitude Era. She was paired up with Val Venus and Sable. She was Sable's bodyguard for a bit, and she was linked romantically with Val Venus. I always remember that one segment where she came on to Val and said, I want... of course, Val Venus, before every match, he would make some double entendre about his dick. And the Big Valboski is like a Rubik's Cube. The harder you play with it, the more you play with it, the harder it gets. And this particular night, he made some reference to his dick being like a slide trombone. And she came out and flirted with him and said, I want your slide trombone. Can't talk today. I want your slide trombone in my brass section. And it's like, damn, that's coming on a little strong there. And, yeah, I mean, she was very, she was a bodybuilder and huge and a great physical specimen. And in some ways that translated well to pro wrestling. Other ways it did not. She didn't wrestle that much and ultimately didn't last that long. And her run in the WWE actually ended in controversy because she ended up suing them for sexual harassment. Now, that's neither here nor there. I don't really want to get into the specifics of that because I don't really know all the specifics. She also she was in ECW briefly as well. But yeah, even though she didn't have huge contributions to pro wrestling, it didn't last long. Obviously, anybody who's in the business, we all kind of feel like a big family, from the fandom to the talents and everybody else that's involved. So, always sad to hear when one passes away. So I wanted to give my condolences to her as well. I don't know all the specifics of what happened with her because she wasn't that old. She was only 50, so I don't know exactly what happened. But obviously very sad, and my best wishes and thoughts and prayers go out to her and her family as well. And finally, right before I started filming this video, I read that Ivan Koloff passed away, the Russian Bear. Ivan Koloff is a former WWF champion, what is now the WWE Championship, but back then it was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And he was the man that ended the longest WWE Championship reign of all time. He defeated Bruno Sammartino. He was a heel. He was basically like a big Russian heel in the same vein as like a Nikolai Volkov or something akin to that. And that's a pretty historic distinction to give somebody. He's the one that defeated Bruno Sammartino after Bruno had that legendary, longest reign ever, 8 years. And he's the guy that got this distinction of ending it. And basically most of his career, he was just a rough, tough, beat-em-up type of guy, which is a style that I like. I love guys that are like that can convincingly be rough, tough badasses. There's just something appealing about those brawler types, and I thought he did. He played the part convincingly. And the Russian Bear, that's a great name. Now that I think about it, that is a very cool name. But yeah, I just heard he passed away literally right before I started filming. It's like, man, that sucks. It's really, God, so many old ones are passing. But yeah, he is a historic figure in pro wrestling. I want to make sure that he gets the recognition that he deserves as well. So my thoughts, best wishes, and prayers obviously go out to him and his family. And yeah, man, so many wrestling deaths this week. And granted, most of them were older. But yeah, it's still sad all the same. But yeah, now that we've moved past all the sad stuff, let's get into getting up to speed on some of the other stuff that's been going on this week in pro wrestling. Last Sunday, I did get caught up on New Japan's New Beginning show in Osaka. I thought overall it was an overall better show than the Sapporo show. Last few matches were really good. Naito versus Elgin for the IC title was a very strong main event. And the Dragon Lee versus Takahashi IWGP Junior title match was insane. I mean, even for like a junior heavyweight match where you expect high flying and all sorts of craziness, I thought, man, that match was nuts. Like that match, they did some crazy shit in that match. It's definitely worth checking out. So overall, I thought that show was better than the Sapporo show. and another really nice outing from New Japan. And that same day, I watched Elimination Chamber, SmackDown's latest pay-per-view effort, and I have to say, I actually did enjoy the show. Most of the matches were good. I think the only match I didn't like was the handicap match. That was stupid, but other than that, I thought overall it was a solid show. Becky Lynch and Mickie James had a good match, even though on SmackDown the next week, Becky beat her at the pay-per-view, and then Mickie won the rematch. It's like, okay, everything's got to balance out 50-50, and that's kind of annoying, but I thought the match they had at the pay-per-view was good. I thought Nikki and Natalya was okay, despite ending in a double countout, which just means, oh yay, they're going to assault each other backstage some more. I feel like they've assaulted each other 14 times each. It's just this never-ending cycle of them attacking each other backstage, and I'm kind of bored with it at this point. But what else was on the show? The Tag Team Turmoil match was good, fun, and entertaining. An interesting theme throughout the show, and this was just them being repetitive, I think. I don't think there's anything grand or special to this, but sore losers seemed to be the theme of the night. What with Dolph Ziggler attacking the Faces after he lost, and the Usos attacking American Alpha after they lost, and Baron Corbin attacking Dean after he got eliminated from the Elimination Chamber, and all sorts of stuff. And it just kind of felt like, being a little repetitive here, but whatever. What else was on the show? There was not an IC title match because of the champion being in the chamber. There was Luke Harper versus Randy Orton. Good, solid match. A little slow in parts, but when it picked up, it really picked up. And credit to Randy Orton, he made Luke Harper look really good here, I thought. Because you look at it on paper, it's like, all right, former world champion, WrestleMania main eventer, all these accolades versus a tag team guy. Probably, on paper it looks like a mismatch, but Orton was able to work with him in a way that made it convincing and made it look like Luke Harper belonged in the ring with him. So, overall, I enjoyed that match. I thought that was good. Naomi and Alexa Bliss was much better than I expected it to be, mainly because I didn't expect much out of it because there was no build-up to the match. Not a lot of build-up, anyway. And it was kind of in that main event buffer spot where it just looked like it was going to be pure filler, so I just didn't think there was going to be much to this match, but through some unique athleticism from the two girls, they made a pretty solid match out of it. I disagree with the title change. Nothing against Naomi. I just feel like they haven't done that much with her to make me believe that she can be champion. And I really don't like it when they do that. I've made that complaint many, many times over the years. I just don't like it when it's like they treat somebody like a non-factor and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to care. It's like, dude, build her up for a few months and then do the title change, and that way it'll mean more. And unfortunately, Alexa, she's been really good in her role and was kind of doing quite well as the heel champion. And now it's like, oh well, that's over. It's like, why not just have her hold the belt until Mania? And Raw did it this week too with Charlotte, where they've got this unfortunate pattern going. I'm not saying the Bayley Charlotte match was bad. They've got this pattern going where Charlotte is unbeaten in title matches on pay-per-view. I like that. That's fine. Keep that streak going. I'm perfectly okay with that. The problem is that she always loses the title on TV. So it's like beating her doesn't feel like that big of a deal because it's like, oh, well, her kryptonite is Raw apparently. So it doesn't mean as much when she loses the title, and it didn't mean as much as it should have when Bayley beat her for the belt, because I feel like Bayley just got there. Like, she hasn't been there that long, and she's already the champion, so it doesn't feel like that much of a payoff. And she's probably just gonna drop the belt at Fastlane anyway, so does it really matter? It's like, I just don't like that hot potatoing. They did it with the Sasha Charlotte feud, and they're doing it now with Bayley and Charlotte, and it's kind of annoying. But all of that said, I thought the SmackDown Women's title match was good, way better than I thought it would be, given factors that were outside of the control of the workers, but they made the most out of it anyway. And then we got the Elimination Chamber match, which was typical good, fun Elimination Chamber-y stuff. I'm not a huge fan of the design of the new chamber, the neon lights and everything. It looks a little silly. I don't mind the padding as much. Some people complain about that. It's like, look, these guys are getting slammed all over this thing, and I'm sure it hurts like a bitch. But AJ Styles did amazingly well here. He looked fit like a glove. It's like, God, I haven't seen him in Lethal Lockdown in a while, so it's good to see him in a match like it in the Elimination Chamber, and he did great in there. Ultimately, I thought the match was very good, very entertaining, worthy of the Elimination Chamber. Bray Wyatt won the title, which a lot of us predicted, mainly out of good God Almighty, could we not get Cena and Orton at Mania, please? But yeah, Bray Wyatt's the champion now. Like I said, I feel like they've really undercut him the way he's been booked. Pretty much ever since the Cena feud. It felt like once the Cena feud happened, it just kind of, he's just been losing more and more since then. He got fed on a silver platter to Undertaker multiple times. He got fed on a silver platter to Cena. And that just kind of hurt him, and he's been kind of a directionless mess. They took his stable away from him for no reason, then just gave him back for no reason because they didn't know what else to do with Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. And yeah, he kind of been damaged goods, and it's like, oh, now that he's damaged goods, now he can be the champion. It's like, fuck you. But I mean, it really does speak volumes of how talented Bray is and how good of a performer he is when he's able to stay over in spite of all that crap that they booked him through. And it's like, no, it was like, I have no problem with that talent being put in the WWE title position. I just wish that they hadn't crapped on the character so much leading up to that point. But what can you do? And it's going to be Bray and Randy at WrestleMania, which I guess I'm fine with that. But he's probably going to drop the belt at Mania to Randy. But it is what it is. I mean, given all the options involved in this match, AJ couldn't win it because he just lost it to Cena, so that just wouldn't make any sense. That would just be annoying. Cena, I don't want him to win it, A, because I hate Cena's character, and B, because I don't want Cena versus Orton again. Corbin's not ready. Dean is the IC champ. And Miz is... Miz is doing the best work of his career, but is still kind of at a mid-card level. I guess they could have given him the win, and I wouldn't have had too much of a problem with it, but Bray was the best option overall, so... yeah, I was completely fine with it. Overall, I thought Elimination Chamber was a good, solid pay-per-view. Not a whole lot else to say other than that. But, yeah, I guess with that, I'll go into Monday Night Raw, which I already talked about the Charlotte Bayley match, but I don't want to talk about that so much as I do one particular segment, the Festival of Friends segment involving Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho. This was the best Raw segment in a dog's age. Like, this was amazingly well done, and kudos to everyone involved in this, everyone that wrote it, booked it, to the performers involved in it. They all handled it masterfully, and it was really, really well done. It has all the things I want in pro wrestling, because it always kind of bothered me. I don't see it as much anymore, but there used to be a thing when people would review Raw, or they'd review Nitro, or review SmackDown or Impact or any other weekly wrestling TV show. They would measure it by how much in-ring action there is. And to me, that is not a good way to measure the success of a show, because what if the in-ring action is bad? What if the matches don't mean anything? And if the whole show is nothing but in-ring action, then the show's just boring and repetitive and the matches have no context. And it's like, what you need is story, characters, and context to make me care about the matches that you eventually do. Whether that be on pay-per-view or next week on Raw or a month later or whatever, you have to get me to care about the matches that take place. So you can sit there for a whole 3 hours and do nothing but matches, but if they don't mean anything, then that's not really going to make for a good show either. When the Cruiserweight division started, it was nothing but matches, and it was boring because nobody knew who these guys were. There was no context to anything. And it was just boring. And then with 205 Live, they were able to expand on the characters, give us feuds, give us storylines, and then the Cruiserweight division became much better. And that's the type of stuff I like. I like characters, I like stories, I like conflict, and I like the matches being treated as a climax or a conclusion to those storylines and those feuds. And after this segment, I am completely fully sold on a Jericho-Kevin Owens match at WrestleMania. Owens is still going to drop the Universal title to Goldberg, but I am fully on board and fully accept a Kevin Owens-Jericho match at WrestleMania, without question. They deserve it. They've earned it. The story is calling for it. Absolutely do that match at WrestleMania. And this segment, everything about it, I thought it was funny, and it reminded me, and I think it reminded a lot of people, of the famous Rock and Sock Connection This Is Your Life segment, with all the gags and all the humor and how funny it was. With Jericho giving all these absurd gifts to Kevin Owens. Like the Birth of Man picture, I think was the greatest thing I've ever seen. That was That was hilarious, and I thought was great. The Gillberg appearance I thought was really funny. And it was actually a very entertaining segment, and it kind of built to this inevitable conclusion where we all just kind of knew that Kevin Owens was going to turn on Jericho. It looked like that's where this was going. And it was done in like the biggest knife in your heart and twisted type of way, where Owens, after all these gifts that Jericho has given to him, and they've celebrated their friendship and everything, and how wonderful everything is, and Owens gives him a brand new list, and Jericho's reading through the list, and he looked legitimately touched by the gift, and then he looks at it, he's like, why is my name on the list? And then Owens goes completely berserk and just beats the crap out of Jericho, turning on his best friend and injuring him, doing things that he did to Sami Zayn, like the powerbomb on the apron and various other things like that. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, Kevin Owens, you bastard. Jericho was fully dedicated to this friendship, and you turned your back on him just because he made a mistake. Fuck you. You're terrible. And I hate Kevin Owens now because of this. And I love to get sucked into the story like that. It's like, fuck you. I hope Jericho comes back and kicks your ass. And I felt so bad for Jericho when it was over. And it was a good way to turn Jericho face again. Because once he turned heel, when he came back as a babyface, he was lame as fuck. Then they turned him heel, and fans started to accept him again because of things like the list of Jericho, and you're going to get it, and you stupid idiot, and all those other things that got over with the crowd. So, he was funny and entertaining, and the fans just kind of fell in love with him all over again, so it was easy to transition him into being a babyface. Now, if they go back to just making him a lame ass, it's going to suck. He needs to be kind of he needs to be angry over this, and he needs to be fired up over this, and really wants to come at Kevin Owens and really get his come up, and really wants to dish out Owens' comeuppance. But I thought the segment was amazing, well done, and it also by doing this, it also eliminates a potential plot hole, because while this segment was going on and they kept talking about the Goldberg match, I was like, why doesn't Jericho just go in there and get Owens DQ'd like in the first minute? Why not? It's like, why don't they just do that? Because they know that it's like, look, Goldberg's going to steamroll you and murder you, so I'll just get you disqualified and you can save your title that way. But they've eliminated that now because Owens is like, no, fuck you put me in this mess in the first place, you need to be taught a lesson. And he beat up Jericho, and now Owens no longer has that trump card, and he's probably going to lose the Universal title, because that's kind of been the story of his whole reign, where the only reason he's kept the belt is because of Jericho, and now that he doesn't have Jericho, he's going to lose the title, especially up against somebody as unbeatable and as machine-like and as tough and indestructible as Goldberg. So, really, this was all really, really well done, and major kudos on my end to, like I said, to everybody involved in this. I thought this was more indicative of what I would like to see out of pro wrestling as a whole. Again, I like stories, I like characters, I like conflicts, and I love those stories, characters, and conflicts creating matches that I actually care about, that have some kind of significance to it, have some kind of meaning behind it, and now I really want to see that match just because of how well they've handled the rise and fall of their friendship, which they put a lot of time into. This wasn't just like a partnership that lasted a month. This has been going on since, July or August? It's been a while. It's been a long time. Maybe even before that. It's been going on for a really long time. And, 6-7 months in modern day wrestling years is an eternity anyway. So this feels warranted. It feels well built up. And now I want to see where it goes, and I want to see the WrestleMania match that results from it. So, masterful job, WWE. You did something right, and I want to congratulate you on that. You did a great job. So, major kudos from me. So, that is all I have for this video. Letting you in on a few things. Next video I do, or at least one of the next 2 videos I'm going to do, is my next classic match review. So the poll for that will be up on Twitter probably either later today or tomorrow. The next match I review will be a classic Saturday Night's Main Event match that you will get to select from the poll on Twitter. So be on the lookout for that. But for now, that is all I have. Hopefully you all continue to enjoy your weekend, and y'all have a good one.